So, I put up these EQ videos last night and YouTube flagged me for copyright infringement, which I shouldn't be too surprised since I did play like a minute of audio from each, but I was just like not thinking about it. And then I got emails early this morning. So kind of frustrating, but not going to be a problem. I'm just going to use one of my own tracks. So, I have to remember what I showed in the other videos, but here, we're going to listen to a little bit of this. It's just an instrumental I have. It's cool. So we're going to go into EQ, and I'm just going to talk a bit about Logic's basic EQ. So I'm opening it from the EQ tab in the plugins, but you can also open it. So if I get rid of this, you can open it from right here as well. So when you're looking at the channel EQ plugin at first, there's a lot going on, but the main thing you have to focus on is this graph here. And you can see it has these little buttons, these little glowing, different colored. We're not going to talk about those yet. I'm just going to turn them off for the moment, just so that I can talk about the graph itself. So, when you're looking at this, you can see these thin bars that go up and down with numbers labeling them. There are 9 of these sections in here. And the way that you think about frequency in terms of your own songs, in terms of your projects, is you split the 9 sections into 3 different sections. So like a third, a third, a third. So 20 to 200 is your lows. 200 to 2K is your mids right here. And then 2K to 20K is your highs. It goes from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz because that's the range of human hearing, which you probably already know, hopefully. But it's important to know the different sections because different types of instruments fit into the different sections. So in this 20 to 200 low area, you're mostly going to be dealing with bass and kick. And then sometimes like a lower synth. But bass and kick they clash a lot because they're both kind of in this, mainly in like 50 to 100 hertz a lot of the time. And you have to change the frequency to make sure that they aren't, right on top of each other. Because let's say this yellow one's your kick, and then this one is your bass. So if they're both boosted, and you would have separate EQs for the instruments, but say, you're boosting your bass in this area, and you're also boosting your kick, well, you can't put your kick, like all the volume, on top of the bass and still be able to hear it, because you only have so much room for volume. So if you have a really loud bass and then you're trying to put an even louder kick over it, what ends up happening is you kind of cancel them both out because they're both in the same frequency range, and you're not carving out the space in this frequency map, which is the whole thing, for both the instruments. So if you want to boost your bass underneath 100, which is like a reasonable thing to do, well, then you can't have your kick super loud in that area. So if you do something with your bass here, then you kind of have to do the opposite thing with your kick just to make sure it's not clashing. And then if you want to turn up your kick farther up the frequency spectrum, that's cool. Like a lot of times I end up like boosting the kick in like 100 to 200 and then having the bass boosted. See, if you do it right, then you end up having a distinct section right here for your bass, and then your kick is mainly there, and then you can turn your kick down. I don't have distinct instruments, and we're definitely going to go into it further, but that's the idea. That's why the frequency map's so important. The same thing happens in this 500 to 2K range, especially if you have a piano or a guitar with vocals, because all of that, a lot of the meat of those instruments is right in this range. And then for vocals, there's a lot of like hissing and popping. The stuff that really makes vocals stand out is in your highs. So if you have the guitar super loud and you don't have the vocal mixed in these mid frequencies, then your vocal just ends up sounding shrill and the guitar is kind of overtaking it. So now that you have an idea of what to look out for with EQ, I'm going to turn all these back on. I'm going to play this track through. That's where I got in trouble with the last one, because I just like played the track for a minute. I can do that with my own stuff. So I'm just going to play the track through and show you what happens to different things. And I'll turn this down so you can kind of hear me talking over it. So you can see the analyzer. You can see the analyzer where most of the frequencies are happening. So there's a lot of... You see when the snare hits, it gets boosted in this high range. You hear all that. The hi-hat. And then now, because there aren't too many drums except for this one hi-hat, which you can still see, there's more stuff happening right here. See, now you can hear both the snare and the keyboard better. If I cut out the bass, see, there is a lot of bass there, but if I cut it out, all you can really hear is that synth, because I made the bass basically focused on the low section in this song. You can really hear that loud guitar in the chorus. But if I turn it back down, it kind of fades to the background of the mix. So yeah, Analyzer's a great tool. This is what you can use to, find it. It's an easy way to find the frequency, and then you can kind of do the frequency mapping like I was talking about with like bass and kick. You can look in your analyzer and it's down here. See, it's off now, but if I turn this on, it turns back on. So if it was just the bass, you'd probably mostly just see this lighting up, and then you wouldn't see so much happening over here. Sorry, it's like a bunch of different colors. But channel EQ is a tool that takes a while to really get used to, because when you first start out, you want to fix everything in EQ, and something important to learn is that if you're fixing an EQ, something's wrong. Like if you're trying to fix sound in EQ, it means it wasn't recorded properly, or you added something else that doesn't sound good. EQ is something that really just adds character, carves a spot in the frequency map for the instrument, but your EQ should never look like this. It should always be like pretty subtle. I like to go pretty thin, not too wide, like maybe that, instead of like way out. Like that's kind of crazy. You're basically just boosting the whole spectrum of sound at that point. So that's channel EQ. And then in this second video, I'm going to talk about a couple more EQ plugins that are in Logic.